Welcome to the Choice Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Nastasha McKeon, founder and CEO of Choice Juicery, author of Plant Food is Medicine, and naturally a health, wellness, and mindfulness enthusiast. I believe that happiness is a choice, and I built my company upon this ethos. This show is a platform where we will discuss all things health, wellness, and mindfulness in hopes of inspiring you further on your journey. We will be sharing inspiring stories, health, wellness, and mindfulness hacks, as well as anything else pertaining to living your best choice life. My hope is that you may hear something on every episode of this podcast that will genuinely be of value in your life. Mike Sherbakov, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here. It's a long time coming.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think you actually interviewed me for a podcast I don't know, maybe 7 years ago, something crazy like that. So
Yeah.
it's fun to
Yeah,
now
we
have
go
you
way
here.
back.
Yeah, we do. I think we just established that recently, 15 years of
It's a
friendship.
long time. That's a
Yeah,
big chunk of our lives.
it's a big chunk. Yeah. So I'm excited to have you on here. I'm excited to hear your story. Obviously, I've known you for a long time and I've seen all the things that you've been into and all the amazing work you've done in the world. But getting to kind of hear your story from the beginning, to today where you are and share that with the Choice audience is really exciting for me. So let's just dive right in. First and foremost, your background, initially from what I know is you started off in the military. That's kind of where your professional career started. And you get out of the military. And I don't know much about that transition from military to yoga. When I met you 15 years ago, I met you, in the yoga community in that world. And so, yeah, seeing that transition, I don't really know what took place to get you there. And I kind of want to know a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's funny because people that I meet in my life now, when I tell them that I was a Marine, a lot of them are surprised. Or on the counter to that, the folks that I was in the Marines with, when they kind of saw me doing yoga teacher training, like what? So they seem like very different worlds, but interestingly, they're now kind of blended together through what I do. But we can talk about that a little bit later. So the kind of the quick version of military. So 5 years active duty as a Marine. That's what brought me down to San Diego, and I was raised in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay
Okay.
Area. And I think an important part of the story is, I have two older sisters and a younger brother, and I come from this family that was very just driven. I mean, oldest sister went to Stanford. Sister after that got a full ride, became a neuroscientist. Little brother went
Wow.
to Berkeley. I mean, a family very driven. And the path was typically, do really well in high school, go to a great college, get a great job. And that's just what you do. And so I would say right at that point is when I started taking more of the unconventional path.
Hmm.
And when I look at the other things that I've done, which I'll share in a moment, it was really kind of following what felt very true to me,
I love
and
that.
not the conventional path. And I know your story is very similar to that as well. It's like
Right.
sometimes when people on the outside look at it, you definitely didn't do the logical thing.
No.
You kind of just did the thing that your heart was telling you to do. So,
Can I
uh,
ask you a question on that? So when
please,
you were
yeah.
when you were making that decision to not take that conventional path, coming from the family that you did, how was that received by your family that you were going to do something different and go this different path? Was there any friction there with your family, or were they always kind of behind you following this unconventional path?
Yeah, there was definitely friction. Interestingly, I didn't have a great relationship with my parents in high school because I was the one that was kind of the rebel,
Okay.
and not necessarily for the sake of being rebellious. I was more just I always asked why. Like if
Mm.
there are these very strict rules and you have to get good grades, I would why, you know. And when it was like social life isn't as important and it's all about school and athletics, is why. And I
Mm.
always had that kind of personality where I wanted to know, and very much still that way. Like, explain it to me. Like, if
Yeah.
these rules exist, why do they exist? And so it was really this choice of joining the military. There were a lot of factors that played into it, including really a deep sense of pride for our country, being a first generation immigrant and seeing what my parents could accomplish in one generation from coming to this country with nothing. I mean, like
Wow.
less than nothing, um, to, fast forward to what they've been able to do, what our whole family's been able to do, what others, like this is an incredible country. And I wanted to really kind of
Mm.
stand up and protect that. And all the other factors of wanting to be independent and have the
Mhm.
adventure, and a number of factors played into that decision. But it was definitely met as a surprise to my parents. I
I can
told them a
imagine.
few weeks before I was leaving for boot camp, and
Right. Oh my
I
god.
know it's like, by the way, I'm leaving. And but you know what? One of the most proud moments of my life actually is when I was graduating Marine boot camp at MCRD in San Diego, and I was graduating as what's called a squad leader. So I'm at the front of the rank there. And I remember, like in the Marines, you have to look straight ahead. At the graduation, it's always. And I just remember kind
Yes.
of looking a little bit off to the side and seeing my whole family in the bleachers, and I just like how proud they were. Like it gives me goosebumps thinking about it. That was an incredibly proud moment for me. And it was, I think, this affirmation. They knew, number one, like Mike's going to be okay. Like no need to worry. And two, like, yes, he's taken that unconventional path, but now he's kind of on his own, and we
Wow.
trust that the decisions he'll make moving forward are the right ones. So yeah.
What a powerful moment.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
so
um,
you're in the Marines. What happens next?
yeah, do the Marine thing, and I have a great experience. I step into leadership roles pretty quickly. I end up in the best duty stations ever. I was in Florida, Hawaii.
Not
I
fair.
know, I know. And I know friends of mine that were in that didn't have great experiences, and it was at the peak of the war, and so obviously like
Mm.
lost people that I knew, that
Wow.
were in with me, and like it came with its challenges. But for me, it was like this leadership academy,
Wow.
5 years, and I come out, um, really with even more confidence in, like, to come back to this theme of like trusting that I'm on the right path, and a confidence in like whatever I choose to pursue, I will be successful in,
I
even
love
if it
that.
feels in the moment,
Hmm.
like I'm not, or I'm moving backwards.
Yes.
Like it's, um, so yeah, get out of the Marines, end up going to San Diego State for my undergrad, study kinesiology and psychology. I was just fascinated with like mind and body. I had an
Mhm.
emphasis in fitness, nutrition, and health, and that's kind of what took me down that path. And I think you read this in the intro or the bio. I worked with some great companies, and with whether it's Lululemon or Fitbit, ended up starting like a fitness company, a yoga towel company, doing a bunch of stuff in the health and wellness space.
Right.
And that's where we originally met. And
Hmm.
and then obviously now transitioning to the investor side of things, where I just kind of help launch startups at scale and invest in the good ones. But long way of answering that, the question of yoga. Interestingly, it's kind of a cool story. What I did in the Marines is I taught their version of hand-to-hand combat. It's called McMAP, the Marine Corps Martial
Okay.
Arts Program. And when I got out, I loved it. So I kept training. There was a gym, called, it used to be called Throwdown. Now it's called Victory, with, Dean Lister and Jocko, if you know who he is, like these
Uh-huh.
badass people.
Yeah.
This is like before Jocko's podcast took off and everything. But I just trained every day, like 3 hours a day, Muay Thai,
Wow.
Jiu-Jitsu, boxing. Like I was so into MMA and mixed martial arts. And what ended up happening is I just hurt all the time. I would wake up and I was in so much pain. Like
Naturally.
everything hurt all the time. And someone actually said, "Hey, go take a yoga class." And I told myself, like, Marines don't do yoga, or MMA people, like fighters, don't do yoga. And so, it took a while for me to come around to the idea. And here's the like fascinating part. the moment I took my first class, I was hooked.
That's amazing. I had
Yeah.
no idea. I didn't know your MMA background.
Yeah.
So it's hilarious to even hear that you had resistance, because
Oh,
you're
so much.
you're just such a powerhouse in the yoga community, so knowing that you had resistance to even going is just that's a riot.
Well, thank you. Yeah, what's funny is like, and again, we met when I was already kind of teaching that. I couldn't explain why, but I took that class and I kind of left after the hour going, what just happened? Like, what happened
Wow.
in this last hour? And I was like, I don't know why, I don't know how, but I need to do that again. And so I ended up going to a studio called Core Power.
Okay.
They had this Groupon going that was like, 30 days for $30 or something.
That's a
I went
deal.
every day, every
No, you
single
didn't.
day,
From the
no
first day.
joke, 30
From
days in
that
a row.
first
That was
day.
like,
Oh
it was
my
like my
God.
challenge. Yeah, yeah. So 30 days in a row. Obviously, I get to know the people there. I get to know the
Right.
instructors. Like, who is this guy coming in? By the way, like that can't touch his toes. Like, I was so self conscious too. I'm not kidding. I was like, I do not belong in a yoga studio. I can't. And um, and they actually were the ones that said, Mike, I think you'd be really great for teacher training. And I definitely didn't want to teach. I was way too self-conscious about the fact, like, I thought yogis were super flexible, as bendy as you can be, doing
Yeah.
like all of that stuff. But I ended up doing teacher training to learn about it, learn
Okay.
about the history, learn about the poses, learn about, I was really more interested in, like, why do I have this pull? Like, why
Uh-huh.
does this thing exist that keeps me coming back to my mat? And so I did teacher training, and never with the intention to teach, but yeah, ended up teaching, one or two classes a week for a few
Wow.
years.
You were my first yoga class. You were my first yoga class ever. We met through like a business connection, and you were teaching yoga at the time at what was Mantra?
Mantra. Hmm.
Mantra, a studio, and in Carlsbad. And you had invited me to a class, and that was my first introduction to yoga. And I had a not quite the same experience as you. I didn't like, get a Groupon and go every day for 30 days, but that first time on my mat, I remember like being in like pigeon pose for the first time and just like all of a sudden just bawling. It's like, what is happening? And you were talking about how emotions are stored in the hips, and it just like it was fascinating to me how moving my body in a certain way could bring up so much stuff that was like stuck in the body. But yeah, you were my first introduction to that whole space, which is finding yoga is like finding a part of your spiritual path, right? In a lot of ways, especially for those of us that didn't have maybe a solid spiritual background. I know for me, I didn't. So it opened a door for me to a whole another avenue of just like spiritual development.
That's so cool. I didn't know that I was your first one, like the first yoga class, and that is amazing. And yeah, I mean, like, the way I look at it now, when I look back, the Steve Jobs thing, where you can connect the dots, looking back, not looking forward. I see, yoga is a great tool, um, and when I break down the elements of why I was so drawn to it, and everyone has a different way
Right.
of, like, finding this. It just blends the elements of being distraction free. you know
Mm-hmm.
you're in a
Mm-hmm.
studio and no phone, so there's something about that, and knowing, like, you don't have a phone to check, so now
Yes.
your mind can kind of relax. Number one. Number
Mm-hmm.
two is you're actually taking time to breathe, which
Mm-hmm.
we rarely do
Mm-hmm.
throughout the day, like
Mm-hmm.
actual deep breaths, right?
Taking one right
And
now.
yeah, and it's like, because we're always, right,
Good
short,
reminder.
shallow breaths.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
like so fast, so quick. And then on top of that, right, you're now blending in an inspiring message, and room and time between the poses for introspection and
Mm-hmm.
thought. And it just takes these great elements that can certainly be done on their own, does not have
Mm-hmm.
to be done in a yoga
Yeah.
studio, doesn't even have to be done with poses, but it just
Of
takes,
course
like,
not.
all of these elements that I think are paths to
Mm-hmm.
mindfulness, whether it's being distraction free,
Yeah.
breath, general movement of the body. Our
Mm-hmm.
bodies are designed to move, um, and putting it into a setting that combines all of those things, that does lead to some like wonderful outcomes, including emotions being
Mhm.
released or just a natural like introspection and asking ourselves the deep and important questions. So yeah, it's a great tool.
It absolutely is. One of the things that I loved about your classes back then were you would encourage us to like close your eyes and not look around and not compare, to because I think you mentioned something earlier about your first class and being like, I don't know what the word was that you used, but for me, it's like, embarrassed. Like, I don't know how to do this pose, or I don't want to look dumb. I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm doing. And, I have that self chatter that goes on all the time. And, being in these classes where you're being encouraged to like stop looking around the room to see what everyone else is doing, close your eyes and just like drop into your body and drop into the breath. And yeah, it's such a powerful tool. Some of the classes that I take now are like free flow yoga, which I took a few years off after I got pregnant with Cora. I was like, I remember the week I found out I was pregnant with Cora, it was my last hot yoga class, and it was at Mantra. And it was like years, Cora's 7 years old now. So I think I went back to yoga last year, at the end of last year. So, 6 years I took off of yoga. Well, I guess almost seven if you consider the pregnancy year, right?
Mhm.
And the first time I found my mat, I take classes at the studio in Encinitas called Estella. And the first time I got on my mat after years of being off, I again broke down. It was like a coming home, to this space. And you said it so eloquently, right? Like you're invited to like really, leave your phone at the door. You don't take that in. You're encouraged to be breathing in your breath and in your body. And really, I look at that as like an invitation to be present fully, which we don't have a lot of opportunity, unless you are very intentional about it. We don't have a lot of opportunity in our daily lives to be fully present, right? Because we've got like, our whole world is in our phone, in our hand all the time, right? Like text messages and emails and work. We're just constantly distracted. There's social media. There's just always something to do. Someone reaching out. So, sometimes it can be hard to be fully present, and so I do think that being in that space, it becomes a sanctuary. But one of the things I love to teach is like you can create that sanctuary anywhere. I know for me at Choice, we have something we call the emotional moat around every location. And I always say, like, when you walk through that threshold, I invite you to leave everything at the door. If someone cut you off on the way into work, if you just got in a fight with a significant other, like whatever's going on in your world, if you're worried about how you're going to make rent or something that just happened last week, like leave it at the door, step into the choice bubble, which is just a funny way of saying the present moment, you know, and be fully immersed in the presence while you're here and be in service to your coworkers, be in service to the community that we're serving, and be in service to yourself because, checking that stuff at the door and being fully present is a gift that you're giving to everybody, including yourself. So we can carve this out in so many different areas of our lives. It doesn't just have to be in a yoga class, but certainly yoga is a great place to, learn how to do that and create that space within yourself so you can bring that into other areas of your life.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's so cool. Well, I just want to say, I love the idea of, the choice bubble because, again, we know all these things. It's like, you talk to the average person and is being do you want to be more present? Most people, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
of course. Do you want to be more grateful? Yes. Do you want to, like, and we know a lot of those tools. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
especially, I remember you telling me the story of choice. It's like, we know it's good for our body to eat healthy,
Yeah.
like eat good healthy foods, but it's why doesn't everyone do it? We know it's
Mm-hmm.
good to exercise. Why doesn't everyone do it? And I love creating frameworks because those kinds of things really help solidify certain habits. So if, someone walks into the choice bubble and it's like you're telling them here, leave everything behind.
Mm-hmm.
Great, what a powerful tool, right? Like I have an alarm that goes off every day at 11:11 on my phone,
I love
and
it.
I recommend this to everyone, even like in my world of venture capital and startups where it's like hustle, grind, get stuff done. I tell all founders and investors that I work with, like, put that in your phone because on an iPhone, you can change the label of each
Mm-hmm.
alarm and it's set on silent, right? So it doesn't bother anyone. But yeah, it goes off every day at 11:11 and the label is stop, breathe, and be grateful. And it's this tiny little thing. But the fact that now I've been doing it 5, 6, 7 years, I don't know how long, but every day it goes off. And even if it's just one moment, I'm in the middle of a meeting and I'll just
Yeah.
say, can we just take a moment, like one deep breath, take it in, and let's keep moving on. But that
Mm-hmm.
compounds over time,
Totally.
right?
Totally.
Every day, over weeks, months, and
Yeah.
years. And it's a framework to follow, just like the choice bubble.
I love that. And you're creating an opportunity to rewire the brain also, and not just in that moment, but you create that awareness around it. Like you take a moment to be present, and then you become more aware because contrast provides clarity of when you're not being present. I know for me, that's a big part of it. They say it's impossible to be unhappy in the present moment. And I couldn't agree more. Like, I might have a storm raging in my personal life or my professional life. In fact, like had some crazy big news, last night that was like pretty traumatic for choice, and it's a big ordeal, right? But right here, right now, when I'm like hanging out with Mike and having a conversation and fully immersed in this moment, not thinking about that, it's impossible to be anything but happy in this moment. For me, it's something I kind of learned through surfing. Like I always
Mm.
noticed that when I would get in the ocean, I would feel so much better, when I got out. But then before I got in. And I noticed that when I was having a really rough day or had stuff like friction going on, tightness in my chest, like anxiety, whatever's going on, I was like, I just need to get in the water. I just need to get in the water. And I started researching it, and scientists will tell you it's the sea foam and all that stuff. And maybe there's some truth in that. I'm not a science denier or anything, but what I really think it is when I'm in the ocean, I'm forced to be totally present because I'm very aware that there are large creatures swimming underneath of me, and the tide is changing and the wind is changing, and never turn your back on the ocean, and all the things that we know as surfers. And so being fully present in the moment while I'm in the ocean, when I get out, I noticed that I feel better than when I got in. And I started to realize it was because I'm being fully present. And Albert Einstein said, you can't solve your problems at the same level of thinking that created them. And I've always loved that because when I'm stuck in something, like, stuck in the muck, I like to say, whether it's, I don't know how to figure out this problem, there's this problem and I don't have a solution, I don't know what to do. Sitting here and dwelling on it from this state of mind isn't going to get me somewhere different. And so sometimes it's actually better for me to like separate myself from the problem and get myself in a good feeling place. And from that place, I actually can, I create space between me and the problem. And now all of a sudden new ideas can flow through and a different way of looking at things. Sometimes I get out of the water and I'm like, oh, that's actually not as bad as I thought it was. So I wanted
Hmm.
to create choice with that mindset, make that the same kind of place for me that the ocean is, where I don't take my problems in the door and I don't dwell on things. And I always say, like, I would never expect that out of my team members if I didn't expect that out of myself. Like, I can't ask that of the people that I work with. You need to honor the emotional moat and you need to leave your problems at the door. But like, oh, I'm having such a bad day and I'm going to take it all out on
Yeah.
you guys, right? Like everyone has to participate for it to work. But okay, now we're
No, I
going off
love
on a
that. And
tangent.
no, it's like it actually ties in well. I mean, with as you're sharing your experience with surfing, and I remember we've surfed a couple times, and like surfing was such a big part of my life before I found pickleball. Unfortunately,
I
I,
know.
I know. I wish I didn't like it as much as I did. But here's actually a great example. Let's get both surfing and pickleball and how
Mhm.
it ties in with yoga. We just said a moment ago, like, what is it about this thing that I kept being so drawn to? And for
Mhm.
me, again, with all three of those things,
Mhm.
yoga, surfing, pickleball, your phone's away. It's not like you're
Yes.
on your phone while you're doing any of those things.
Can't
We
be.
talked about
No.
you can't be breath, like you're naturally. I know when I'm out there sitting on a surfboard, whether it's between sets and I'm just looking out at like the beauty of the ocean or the sunset
Yes.
or whatever it is, I
Mhm.
find myself breathing deeper. Like
Mhm.
also pickleball, you're breathing deeper.
Oh
You're
my
just kind
gosh.
of it. You're moving
Especially
the
if someone's
body.
playing with you, because you
Yeah.
gotta worry that ball is gonna come smack them
Yeah.
somewhere on their
That
body. So you gotta
that
be breathing, you
that
gotta be
does.
moving, you gotta be paying attention.
Yeah. Also, all of those things. Exactly right. Breathing, moving, being present. Like,
Yeah.
try not being present surfing when a big wave's coming. Try not being present when you have Nastash on the other side of the pickleball court about to smack you. You have to, no. And so it's like, it's
Yeah.
forcing, and
Mhm.
I think the more activities we find like that, that blend
Yeah.
all of those things together, that's like, how can you be unhappy in those moments, to your point, of being
Yeah.
fully present?
Yeah. Well, I think about it like with pickleball, you hear people say, like, get your head in the game, right? Like if you're like botching it, it's like, get your head in the game. Like, where are you? You need to be here. We hear that a lot with sports, like, get your head in the game. To me, life is the same way. It's like, get your head in the game. Where are you? Be right here, fully immersed in this moment. Even if you're doing dishes, even if you're doing the laundry, even if you're like working at the counter, whatever you're doing, like, be doing it all the way, be there all the way, 100%. And when you are, more often than not, magic shows up. You know, when I show up fully present in the moment and I really give my full attention to what I'm doing, so much cool stuff happens from that space versus me kind of, pardon the expression, but like half-assing it, right? Being halfway here and
Mm.
halfway trying to solve a problem somewhere else at some future date and time. So yeah, it
Yeah.
does all relate.
Yeah. I would even argue that like the magic is actually there without going like too woo woo. And it's
Yes,
just being present allows you to see it.
there you go. Even better. Yeah, agreed. Okay, so how do you go from, yoga teacher to running these funds and creating just magic around the world? You're one of the biggest philanthropists that I know. You do so much amazing work in the world. I want to talk a little bit about the house builds and I want you to share the starfish story, which is like my favorite story. It's something that I always love when you do the house builds. It's the story that you share. Like, I think it's usually like the Friday night, the first night that we're all together at the end of the first day of the house build. You share the story about the starfish, which I heard for the first time years ago on my first house build with you. I actually loved it so much. I put it in my cookbook, Plant Food is Medicine. It's actually in there. But yeah, it's such an
So
inspiring story.
awesome.
So I want to hear the starfish story, but I also just want you to dive in and tell us how you went from yoga teacher to everything else that you're doing, clearly continuing to answer that call of like, going the unconventional route in life. And so, yeah, share a little bit more about that, please.
Yeah, well, it's actually funny how it all ties together to that starfish story. And the starfish story is the following. One day, old man walking on a beach, sun's out, middle of the sky, and he's lived a long life, and he's lived this life that a lot of people that we've met. It's like that person, you say hello, they're like, "Hey." like, you know, and you're like smiling and joyous and like again seeing the magic around you, and when you tell them that, they're like, what are you talking about? There's no magic, like they've lived a certain life, and
Yeah.
we've all met people like this.
Yeah.
So he's walking on the beach, and he sees this figure that's a little ways away. It looks like it's dancing. He gets closer, realizes it's a little boy, and what the little boy is doing is he's got that smile on his face, just full of joy, and like as present as one can be. He's just picking up starfish off of the beach, and he's throwing them into the ocean, just picking them up one at a time, like smile on his face, radiating joy, throwing starfish in the ocean. What are you doing? And the little boy, like big smile, joys as ever, says like, what do you mean? The sun's out right now in the middle of the sky. The tide's gone out, and these starfish here are stranded on the beach. And so if I don't pick them up and throw them in the ocean, they're going to die. They're going to burn up and die. And the old man, again, lived life a certain way, looks at life through a certain lens, and he says, what do you mean? He's like, there's miles of beach. Look around, boy. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of starfish all over this beach. You can't possibly make a difference. And the little boy, smile on his face, reaches down, picks up a starfish, throws it in the ocean, and says, it made a difference to that one. And I love this story, and I tell it at every house build project we do in Mexico, because to me it illustrates what I think is kind of the meaning of life in a, like a very like meta way of thinking about it. And in the house builds, I ask, and we go around and share. Uh, every individual shares what they believe their starfish is in that moment, which obviously changes over time.
Of course.
And the other way of asking that question, what is your starfish, is also like, what do you feel like you're here to do?
Mm.
What is it that, what are you here to make a difference in? And let's like have this thought experiment for a minute that the fact that you're here and you're alive and you're breathing is not just a coincidence. It's not just a function of some crazy things happening and boom, you just showed up and then boom, you're gone one day. Like, let's pretend that there's an actual reason you're here. Again, whether you believe this or not, just like play
Right.
pretend with me for a moment. And then let's go a step further and say, like, not only are you here for a reason, but also the blueprint for you to follow, like little breadcrumbs, also exists. And that is following this passion you have,
Mm-hmm.
this curiosity you have, the things that you feel pulled to do. And what we've talked about for the last half hour is like that yoga mat for me at one point in my life was like, I have to go back. I don't know why. I have to do it. And like, I can't argue. You just can't argue with that.
No.
Just like when I was 18 and joining the Marines, like it again didn't make a lot of sense, but I knew there was this knowing that that's what I need to do. And it's the same thing with the house builds. The house build projects we do in Mexico, we've been doing for 11 years now. Same exact experience. Someone invited me on a project. It was their birthday, Cindy. I have this incredible experience where we leave on a Friday from San Diego, show up, dirt, piles of wood, family living, sticks for walls, tarp for a roof. And in 48 hours, there's a 2-bedroom home, loft insulation, electric. You've been part of it. You've
Yes.
built it. And a family's walking in their new home for the first time. And it changes their life. It changes their family's life for generations. And I remember being on the drive back from that project the first time 11 years ago. And just like the yoga mat, I was like, I have to go back. Like, there's no, like, I could try to deny it. I can try to pretend and push it down, in Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces and the whole idea of the hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
They call it the call to adventure, the call to action. The phone's ringing. It's saying, hey, you know, you got to go back. And so I did. And, very fortunate that now there's this really great community of people like you and others that have come down. And then, so like my, greatest joy ever is the fact that people that have come down now lead their own projects, and
Mm-hmm.
people that go in those builds are leading their own, just like it was for me. And it's just the most beautiful thing. So the way I see it is like, I picked up a starfish at one
Mm-hmm.
point because that's what I knew I needed to do. And someone else saw that. I was like, oh, okay, let me pick up a starfish. And now it feels like, at least in my life, probably similar to yours, we're just surrounded by folks picking up starfish and throwing them in the
Absolutely.
ocean, whatever that starfish is. I mean, look at what you've created with choice. It's like, and um, my thoughts, the last piece I'll share is like, um, Dr. Bronnie Ware had a big impact on me. She's the Australian palliative care nurse that studied patients in their last 8 weeks of life. There's you can look her up, and she came up with this thing where she asked people on their deathbed what their biggest regrets were.
Wow.
And unfortunately, most people had a lot of regrets at the end.
Right.
And the number one regret, kind of combined and simplified in very like simple sentences. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me.
Oof.
And I just like, that's always stuck with me is, wait, people are on their deathbed right now
Mm-hmm.
as we speak, wishing that they'd had a courage to live a life true to themselves. In other words, Nastasha, choosing, making the
Mm.
choice,
Yes.
right, to pick up whatever their starfish is.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of had this realization where I do not want to wait until I'm on my deathbed to have that realization. Like, let me use that wisdom that they share now. And the
Absolutely.
whole idea is this thing flies by. Again, we did the math. We've been friends 15 years or whatever it is. To be honest, it's like a couple more of those
Yeah.
and it's our time.
Yeah.
And if it flew by like the last 15 did, and like, it, man, it goes fast.
It does.
But when I'm at the end, what I know now is like what can feel at peace knowing is like I'm doing what I'm here to do. And I
Mhm.
think you can probably say the same for you, and being a mom and a daughter and a sister and running Choice and the things you do on a daily basis. Like I feel grateful knowing that I'm using my time here well, like picking up the starfish that I feel are that I'm here to pick up, and that leaves me a feeling of peace. And I
Absolutely.
hope that others like think about that starfish story and ask themselves very honestly, like, are you picking up the starfish? Are you doing the things
Mhm.
that you feel like you're here to do?
I wonder a lot when you share that story at the house builds. Usually we're sitting around, in a big circle with 30 humans, from all different walks of life and from all over the world. And when you turn that story around and you ask that question, like, what is your starfish? And people are kind of put on the spot to share what they believe their starfish is. There, you can sometimes see the people that are being asked this question. It's such a big question, right? Like, what is it that you're passionate about? What are you here to do? What difference are you going to make in the world? It's such a loaded question. And you can see a lot of times just by looking at people's faces in response to that, how it's likely the first time that they've ever been asked that question. Because I think so many people, go that conventional route. They do what's expected of them, not because they're not brave or courageous or any of the above, but because it's just like what they know until they kind of see something different. I know for me, I've had the people in my life that I saw doing things different that made me kind of question, like, wait, you you can do that? It's not, I don't have to just follow this path and just work for money and buy the house and have the white picket fence and and then die one day. Like, I can do something that means something to me. I can follow a passion inside of me, even if I don't know what that looks like, even if that's scary, even if that's unconventional and people think I'm crazy, and even if I might fail, like, I can follow that. Um, so a lot of times I think, and what you said is so true, like, you're picking up those starfish and you're throwing them in. And I mean, I've sat there and seen the lives that you've changed. One of the house builds, I got to hear the story of one of the families that you've supported their whole school years, and watched, I mean, not a dry eye in the entire house, from the family that you've helped, put through school, to everybody sitting in that room. But that's just one of many lives that you've touched. um, but the fact that you've inspired so many people around you that walked, by you and saw you picking up those starfish and throwing them in, they're like, oh wow, yeah, you're right, there's starfish down here, yeah,
Mm.
you're right, I can make a difference, and throw them in. I know I was inspired by your story and started, sponsoring a family through Baja Ed, and have gone back down on house builds, and have been asking myself bigger questions, like, what am I doing? Like, what more can I do? Because yeah, choice is a big passion of mine. And creating a place where people can make truly healthy choices, not be confronted with bad choices when they're trying to make good choices. They walk in the door and everything's designed to be good for them. I'm putting high quality nutrition in people's bodies and inspiring them, and doing it in an environment that fosters, like, happiness and positivity and kindness. Like, I love that. But I'm like, what more can I do? As you said, life is so short. We're going to blink and it's going to be another, couple of 15 years that have gone by. And like, what difference did I make? And having people like you, such a leader in the community, where we see you, I see you, and I'm like, wow, like, look at the impact that he's making. And it makes me want to ask more of myself. It makes me want to pick up more starfish and then inspire other people around me to pick up starfish. So you're definitely a light in this world, and you inspire so many people, I think, more than you even realize. The impact that you have on everyone around you. It's really impressive, and I'm grateful to call you a friend, that's for sure.
Well, thank you. And I want to flip it on you and
Uh-oh.
say, no, it's true. Like you saw from the last house build, you're there. What I love is when people don't know that you're associated with choice, and you get to see the impact. Talk about making an impact on people without even realizing it. At that last house build, when you went around and shared, oh yeah, also, I started Choice. You had all of these people that are like, I love that place. Like, it makes me happy. They're saying, I love the notes people write on it. I love how healthy it is. I love this. I love that. We still have that group thread going, and people are in Choice all the time.
Still.
No, it's like, it's a testament to, like, there, you decided what it is you wanted to make a difference in. And I know your story and why you started it and how it goes back to, your childhood and all of this. And like you took what was, a challenging experience and like help helped and continue to help a lot of people. And the fact that how many people, hundreds of thousands, I don't know, millions, like at some point will like be impacted through what you created,
Mhm.
whether reading the book, whether passing you at the store and just like having a great conversation with you going into choice, and like now their bodies are nourished, or they have a great conversation because they're in the choice bubble, they're more present. Like that's just such a cool thing to know that like the world is a little bit better because you existed. And that's
Mhm.
like, again, it goes super fast, but what a great feeling to know that like you got to make people's lives better while you were here.
Absolutely. I think that's my biggest life goal. I realized this probably about, I mean, somewhere between the 20 and 15-year mark ago when I kind of left like the corporate world and decided to pursue my passion, that my life word, I was at this intention setting party, and there was this high profile, I don't know what she was, medium or something along those lines, and this woman I was consulting for her company at the time, she had put together this intention setting party, and it was all these like entrepreneurs and leaders, and they had this high profile medium there, and it was, a big deal, and I was kind of nervous to go. I had a lot of imposter syndrome, back then. Like I didn't think I could sit at the table with those people, and a lot of that stuff going on in my mind. I was really nervous, and I got there and we did all kinds of things that night. But the most impactful part of that night was they had said our homework was to come up with a word that was our life word, and then we were going to share that word, and she was going to like chime in on it. And it was going around like every single person, and every time somebody spoke up, she'd like raise her hand, and then she'd be like, BS, you're blah blah blah, and she would kind of
Oh
go on. I was
man,
like, oh my god.
that sounds
I was
traumatic.
I'm so scared. I was so terrified of this woman. And people were crying, but they were like, "You're 100% spot on. Like, thank you. I needed to hear." Like, she was like calling people out on their stuff. She was not holding back, and I was terrified. It was coming around to me, and the word that I had chosen, when I really sat with it and thought about it, my life word was impact. And I decided in that moment when I created that intention that my goal was to leave this world a better place than I found it. I wanted the world to be better because I lived. Because to me, that meant that my life was worth something, right? And so I shared that. And it was like, yeah, January of 2014. And I shared, my word is impact. I want to leave the world a better place than I found it. And I saw her hand go up, and I was like, oh my God. I was so scared. And she said, beautiful. And you're actually going to do,
Oh,
and she just like, she laid into me in a really positive way, but she was like, you're actually aligned with that. And she was like, you need to watch out for the distractions, but you need to move forward on that. And that, that like intention, I didn't even, choice was an idea in my mind at the time, but that was January of 2014. By June of 2014, I opened the doors at Choice, which is like 10 years
wow.
ago now. Crazy. 10 years ago, June 18th. So yeah, it's so fascinating how quickly things can come together when you're like really aligned. I don't think Choice would still be here today if it wasn't for how clear my vision is about maintaining the integrity of our products. I don't know how else, other than divine, we've been able to weather some of the storms we've been through and not lose the integrity. Because to me, I've always said the moment that we lose integrity is the moment I just bought myself a job, and I'm not interested in having a job. I want to love what I do so it doesn't feel like work, and I want to make a positive impact. And so I feel blessed that 10 years later we're here, we're thriving, we're growing, and we haven't ever had to sell our souls and compromise and dilute our products or pasteurize our products, but we are like the one man still standing, one woman I should say still standing, doing things, by the book, doing it right so that we can actually sell products that are healthy, and watch people be nourished by visiting our shops in so many ways, right? So thank you for saying all of that. That means a lot to me. We only have a few more minutes left, so I want to kind of dive into the rest of the story. I want to hear, how you got into what you're doing now with, the impact work that you're doing and running these funds. Like, tell me a little bit about that and what's in the future for you, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, it actually just ties in with what you shared. So you said you had this vision of choice in January, and in June the doors were open. And
Hmm.
again, when I look back, I see how all the dots connected. And I've always been fascinated with business, because I think as individuals we can make a certain impact, right?
Hmm.
Like for us to go down and build a home, that's like first of all, if I did it, tried to do it by myself, it would it would take me a very long time. I feel like I've done it enough where I can kind of figure it out, but it would take me a long time.
Yeah,
Okay, now you bring 30 people down with this a shared mission, and it goes in 48 hours.
crazy.
Now you bring other people that are going to lead their own, and you have an organization like Baja Bound that supports it, and you now do them at scale, and they're doing like 100 a year or something. Like
It's
when I first started
amazing.
going, it was I think 5 or 6 a year.
Yeah,
So I see how when you create the framework of a business and a system, that you can scale your word, which is impact, right? And I've just been fascinated with that. And so, yeah, my world now is helping people like you that had this idea and say, I want to start a business. And so I run the world's largest startup accelerator for Southern California. I run that,
wow.
and for veterans, we give them a fellowship to go through the program for free and all that stuff. But we essentially help them 0 to 1, meaning ideation to MVP, minimum viable product. Like we help them get off the ground with all of the things that they need, from, to your point, vision and mission. It starts there. If you don't have a
Yeah,
deep why on what you're actually building and why you're doing it, it will not survive.
agreed.
It can survive in the short term. It won't survive in the
Yeah,
long term.
no,
And
it's
then
hard
we
to weather
do,
storms
yeah. And
without
the
the
way you
why.
weather the storms is you have to have a deep conviction, and it
Yeah,
has to be the problem you're solving has to really matter to you. So anyway, we're in the middle of a cohort now. We have 40 founders going through, and so I run two of those cohorts every year, and we
wow.
we help you know great purpose driven entrepreneurs start their companies. And then I run a venture capital fund. And so we invest in great companies. And our specific thesis at the fund is advancing America through venture capital. To come full circle, I talked about, how grateful I am for this country and the opportunities it's provided
Hmm.
me, my family, other people I know. And I think we have to keep driving innovation. We have to have, entrepreneurship be at the forefront of people's minds. We have to have incredible people like you and others that have these visions for the companies they want to create, the problems they want to solve, and help them do it at scale. And so that's, and it actually ties everything I've done together, because it's called the Veteran Fund,
I
and
love
we
it.
invest in companies that have veterans on the leadership team. And I'll just share a quick fun fact, because we're recording this right now on March 6th, and 2 weeks ago, almost to the day, it was 2 Thursdays ago, one of our early investments, one of our portfolio companies, landed on the moon.
Stop it.
So, oh yeah, it's like
Landed
we
on
were
the moon.
on the moon. The first time the US has done it since 1972, the first time a private company's done it in history.
Wow.
And yeah, we caught a ride with SpaceX's Falcon 9. We were on the Intuitive Machines lunar lander. It was a 6-day journey from launch to the moon. And the whole idea of this company, Lone Star Lunar, that we invested in, is they are kind of setting up the infrastructure, and they're putting data centers on the moon. Because if we are going to be interplanetary species, this is very nerdy stuff, by the way,
This is
but
so
I
cool.
love this. Yeah, if I believe we're going to be interplanetary species, and if in order for that to happen, we need the moon as a forward operating base. So if people didn't watch it, I was glued to my screen watching that lunar lander slowing down from 24,000 miles per hour down to zero and landing on the south pole of the moon. The first document that we actually transmitted was the Declaration of Independence. So, just
Wow.
very, and again, I couldn't come up with this. I'm a
Right.
decently smart person, but we got to, we're fortunate enough to be a small part of like this company, Lone Star's journey. Right, we invested in them. Then when they raised their subsequent round, we doubled down our investment, and
Wow.
because of the resources we were able to provide, we now have technology on the moon. And
That's
to me,
incredible.
that's like the beauty of this, and the beauty of entrepreneurships and
Hmm.
startup and innovation, and all of it,
Collaboration.
collaboration, and all of it is significant. Like, we need it all. We need the
Yeah.
choices that all over the world that
Yes.
are nourishing people with healthy food and smoothies and drinks and all of it. And we need the literal, there we go. We need the literal moonshots
We
that
do.
are going to the moon and setting up infrastructure for us. And so
Wow.
I love, if you can't tell, I'm like very nerdy about this.
I
Like,
love it. You're
all,
so lit up.
yeah, yeah, it makes me so happy. It's like, it's all, I wake up thinking about it. I go to sleep thinking about it. I just like, I'm very proud of what we've built, and excited for kind of the next few decades of continuing this work.
Naturally. That's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. Wow. How exciting to be a part of something so groundbreaking, So like what a massive part of history, that you get to help create the infrastructure to make something like that happen that's pretty amazing. I'm proud of
It's
you.
so
That's
cool.
so
I'm
cool.
so happy thinking about it.
Yes. Okay. So, how do people connect with you if they want to get involved in any way? How do they find you? How do they connect with you? How do they get on these house builds and start figuring out their starfish and get to hear that story for the first time too? Like, how do they find you?
Yeah, I think just my website's probably the easiest because it has the fund on there. It has the accelerator if someone again has an idea and they want to
Mhm.
start like they're serious about starting a business. If they want to join on a house build, you'll see that on the Greatness Ventures site. So I think that, yeah, MikeSherbakov.com kind of has all those things.
It sure does. It also has a merch store on there, I think, where you can find some Do Great Things merch.
Look, gotta
Yes.
rock it. Yeah.
Okay. So I know I sent you that picture. I love it because I see these all over the world. Like I was in Costa Rica in Nosara with Cora a few weeks ago, and we're just at some random juice stand because obviously, whenever I'm traveling, I'm like checking out the juice scene. Like, how are they doing? Do they need a choice here? What's going on? And I'm standing at this little juice truck in the middle of Nosara, what seems like the middle of like the jungle nowhere. And Cora, my 7-year-old daughter, looks up and she's like, "Mom, look, do great things." And she spots a
Oh,
sticker
that's
on
so
the
awesome.
juice cart. And I was just like, I see it everywhere. I see it's really made its mark in the world. So do great things. If you want to support Mike's work, one of the ways you can do that is going onto that merch store and checking out the Do Great Things that have some Do Great Things hats, which you actually get one as a gift when you go on his house builds. But yeah, it's a great way to, spread the word and support an incredible human doing amazing work in the world. So thank you so much for joining me today, Mike. I look forward to connecting with you down the road and hearing, all the exciting things that you're going to have to share in probably just a few months from now, even. So we'll definitely have to get you back on and learn more about what's going on in your world. But thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for saving all those starfish from, getting burned up on the beach.
Well, I appreciate you, Nastasha. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening in. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could leave a review so we can reach more people. I might even share your review on future episodes. If you go to the link in the show notes, you can find and sign up for our newsletter so that you're notified when a new episode comes out. You can support the show by purchasing anything from the Choice Juicery online shop at choicejuicery.com. Or, of course, if you're lucky enough to live in San Diego, you can visit any of our 7 locations here in San Diego and Orange County. And please feel free to connect with me on social media at Nastasha McKeon. That's NASTASHAMCKEON. Don't forget that extra S. Or you can connect with us at the Choice Juicery Instagram at Choice Juicery. Thanks again for listening in.